Hey, it's Adam, and you're listening to The Adam Cobb Show, weekly content devoted to all things fitness, finding your center, and fumbling through fatherhood. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. We hope this is a space that you come to, that you can feel connected. We're better together. Please subscribe and follow all of our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode. Today, I want to honor my grandmother. I call my grandmother Sittoo, or I called my grandmother Sittoo. It's a weird thing to go from present tense to past tense. It's been a really hard 3 weeks. We took some time off from the show and recording. I needed some space, and I needed to go through the grieving process, something that I really had never done. I had many dear people pass in my lifetime, but this time I wanted to take some time. Again, my grandmother, we're part Lebanese, and we lean into that side, and in Arabic, grandmother is Sittoo, Sittoo, and I miss my Sittoo. And there were 3 titles that I thought of for this episode. 1, we didn't run from the grief. Number 1. Number 2, holding my mother and honoring my grandmother. And number 3, walking through loss. And I just want to touch on this grieving process for me, because what I know is I had never taken parts of different people that I respect that sort of do this for a living, and they guide people, whether they're therapists or grieving specialists or whatever they do, or they've just actually been around a long time and they know a lot about life and they've done a lot of life. And I reached out to a few people, and they gave me some guidance in this. And this was the first time I remember somebody passing and seeking support. It just so happened that my mom was visiting from Massachusetts, and my mom, and you know how close I am with my mom, my hero, one of my best friends, and she came to visit to see all the grandkids, all 3. And the next day, we got the call that Sittoo passed, my mom's mom. And my mom decided to stay in Los Angeles, in Hermosa Beach with me and the family, because she said, well, even though I'm the primary caregiver, I can make the phone calls from here, and I'd rather just be surrounded by the love of life, of all these young kids. And it just so happened that that our twin boys, Sterling and Lionel, got a stomach bug around the same time. So then they didn't go to daycare, and they stayed home, and we were all in. So my mom probably got more than she anticipated, but it was quite the week. And I felt like I tried my best to feel, but also hold space for my mom for the week. And when I say holding my mother, I had never held my mom before for a week of her grieving her mom. And normally if somebody passes, my mom is speaking to my pops, her husband, about it and being in proximity with him. Well, this time was a kind of a rare moment where she was in proximity with me. So there were every day there came a pocket of time where I was holding my mom, and she was, belly crying, the whole body shaking, crying. And of course I cried when that happened. But it was incredibly special, and we sort of poured into each other. I found some guidance and some support in an author and his book, and I wanted to just name it right off the top of this. The book is called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. The quote that I sort of took from this book and the underlining message was this. Grief is not a state that we enter and eventually leave, but rather a companion, a teacher. Again, grief is not a state we enter and eventually leave, but rather a companion and a teacher. And this has been a couple weeks here, 3 weeks of real teaching. And if you're in this place and you had someone recently pass or graduate to heaven, as I like to say, my belief is that my Sittoo is in heaven and joined and has joined her 2 sons that have passed before her and one of her daughters that have passed before her, and to go up to heaven and see her 3 kids. And I've just done so much reflection, sitting by the water, going for a walk, and thinking, I wonder what she said to them, and I wonder what they said to her. Like, I'd want to be part of that conversation. Sittoo is somebody that I felt like should have been the greeter at like a Target or Walmart when you first walk in, and she just greets you and she puts a smile on your face. I know with my parents, if we're at a restaurant and I kind of spark up a conversation with the waiter or something, eventually they're like, okay, Adam, my pops will say, okay, son, isn't that enough? Let's just eat. My mom will go, oh, only you. Well, my Sittoo was kind of brought that out of me because she was more of that than me. She was more outgoing and more connected with strangers and wanted to get to like the essence of who they are, which is really what this whole show and pod is about, beyond the highlight reel and about the human story. So that's part of honoring Sittoo in this episode and speaking about the mourning and the grief aspect of life is me sharing that's who Sittoo was. Someone who would put a smile on your face and would really make you feel just seen. And she gave the best hugs, long hugs. And just for Easter, which was just, a month ago, I went over Sittoo's house and she was sitting in her recliner. And as always, I said, well, when I come home, it's an opportunity for you to do a squat. So at 93 years old, Sittoo did her standing up from her chair, and we did a couple squats. And then we walked outside without a walker, and she was in reasonably good health at 93 years old. So as much as this should not have been a shock, because she was 93, it was a shock because she lived on her own. She walked without a walker. There wasn't any real, mental challenges in that. She was overall strong, fiery, and man, I miss her. I just miss her. A few friends reached out, and I have one friend that has done a fair amount of grieving herself, and she said to me, sorry for your loss, all those words. And then she said something that I did not expect. She said, I'm jealous. And I think when I first read that, it was a text message, and I read the text and I thought only she could get away with that. I'm jealous. But she said, I'm jealous. You've had a grandmother your whole life. And, for her, she wasn't able to have any grandparents. They all had passed early. And there was a moment in there and I thought, man, I hope everybody has a friend like that not only hears you, because that's important, not to dismiss it, but then also sort of kind of called me up. And in that moment, she called me up. Thank you. You know who you are. You called me up in that moment. And you gave me fresh eyes to something that I just had teary eyes over. And I started crying happy tears when you sent me that message. It makes me think about the importance of community and the importance of friendship and of direct, honest, loving kindness. And that's exactly what that message did. I'm jealous. I wish I had that. And you got to have that. And I thought, man, I got to have a grandmother. I got to have my Sittoo for so many years, my whole life. How lucky am I? And there'll be a ceremony soon. And that's sort of what, even when my mom was visiting, what mom and I focused on was we just started sharing some stories. We started laughing. And we even went to, I hope mom's okay. Mom, I hope you're okay with me sharing this. We went for a walk on the Strand, and there was some rocks that we walked up on, and we were pretty heavy. It was like 3-4 days out, and we simply sat down on these rocks where the ocean was hitting against the rocks and coming up, and we just said, hey, let's just close our eyes and pray. And then I said, Mom, is there anything that you want to say to your mom? And Mom started speaking out loud to her mom. And then it was my turn. And I spoke out loud to the ocean, to the heavens, to God, to Sittoo, to the expansiveness. I apologized to her. And I apologized because she would always say, I'm praying for you. And she would have her rosary beads and she would be praying all the time. And I would always kind of want to come from that non-traditional sort of Christianity of like, well, okay, but like, let's not do like a scripted prayer and hold the rosary beads. Let's do something that's like from the heart. And so I'm on these rocks and I'm saying, sorry, Sittoo. The facts were you prayed every single day for me and my family. And like, that's incredible. How many people really do that? It's one thing to say, hey, I'm praying for you, but I knew Sittoo was holding her rosary beads and she was praying. She was praying different saints, Saint Shabel, the Lebanese saint, and a bunch of different saints. And then I said, Sittoo, I please keep praying for me because I believe maybe your prayers are even more powerful now in heaven. And as you're, listening, I'm not sure if you've done this because I know I hadn't sort of taken the space and time that these friends had shared with me. They said, don't overbook your schedule, make time, make space. And on that day, I carved out some space. And the space was to be with my mom and to talk out loud to Sittoo. And you might have somebody that has passed or graduated to heaven that you haven't had that conversation with. And Sittoo loved the ocean, so we went to the ocean. And maybe there's a place that you and that loved one that has passed would go to and visit. And if you haven't had that conversation, I'd encourage you to do it because I felt like there was an openness that happened. There was a connection with Sittoo. There was a connection with my mom and I. And it was powerful, and I'm grateful. And not only that, but then I took gaps. I actually scheduled 2 hours in each day. And there's a few friends that I feel like are just have a spirit that I admire and a love for God, and they have a rich spiritual life. And I went on a walk with them. And it was needed. But these are things that I had never done before. In the past, like most, I would just, okay, this happened, I'm sad, and I'm going to power through. I even, as a coach that does a fair amount of Zoom sessions with people, I even jumped on a Zoom session with a client, and I said, and they knew what happened, and we jumped on Zoom, and he said, so how you doing? And I was like, I'm good, how are you? And he went, oh, nope, you're not getting out that easy. And this is my client who I'm here to serve. he sort of walked me back and said, no, listen, you just had your grandmother pass, and that's heavy and hard, and how are you really doing? And then I looked at him through the Zoom and I said, oh man, this guy, he's gonna make me cry, I know it. He's leaned in, his eyes are like sparkly, he's really in it, he's not wavering, he's not distracted. I encourage community and village because even my client in that moment was able to sort of hold a space. And I, in turn, after now, years of having a coaching practice, in the past, I would have just not even shared what happened. And I would have just been like, hey, how are you? Yep, keep going. And because I did share the news, and then I tried to get out of it, but he paused and kind of led me back. I shared different aspects of my Sittoo, and he just sat there. And the session, we still got a good 50 minutes with him, but about 10 minutes, he really sat there with me and honored my Sittoo with me, and I cried for sure. It was a special moment, and it was a reminder and an affirmation that in the past, I would bring just a part of me to conversations and a part of me to even my coaching practice. But in that moment, I brought all of me. And what I realized is that client wanted all of me, which also included this heaviness and this loss. And once I shared that, first 10 minutes, I felt like I did share that, and he held that space, and it was grateful. And then we kind of got on to the business of coaching him in his life. And it was an affirmation that I can bring all of me, even in loss, to people, to loved ones, to clients, and I won't. There's no going back at that point when you start having people that care, that are that considerate, and that get to share the truth and share all of me. So my hope for myself is that I continue that. At the end of the day, I am a man, and as a man, you know how it goes. Even if I'm emotionally available or intelligent, whatever that is, I still want to fix. And when this happened, when Sittoo passed, my mom was there, I sort of wanted to just immediately went into default of wanting to bring joy and do this, and what this process of really taking space to mourn, really taking space to grieve and go through the process. I found that this grieving process isn't about fixing, but it's about feeling fully. And I've been feeling fully. I've been feeling fully. Like I said, it's been about 3 weeks, and we'll have the ceremony soon. We'll feel more, but it's been a daily thing, and it's hard. And for the person that is connecting with this message, because it's hard for you, I encourage, again, that book and The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and that grief can be that companion and that teacher, and making friends in that way, and not running from it, and not being busy, but being present to it as much as possible. Of course, life does go on, and that is hard. It feels sometimes like it shouldn't, but I'm grateful that it does. I'm grateful to be here speaking to you and sharing this with you right now. And my overall hope is that something from this episode that you catch, and that it matters, and that it helps you in your process. And I'm going to continue to feel and not fix, sort of a promise to myself. I hope also this episode honors Sittoo, how she brought lots of light and love to people and to me, And I already missed the FaceTime calls that I would call my mom and she'd be in the background. And to FaceTime my mom now and her not be in the background at least 3 days out of the week, it's hard. It's hard that she's not there, and I know she won't be there, but I know she's now hopefully everywhere. I love you, Sittoo, and I look forward to spending more time with you in this kind of new way.